Hi, this is The Philosophical Angle, and I am your host, Chris Angle. I'm the author of 4 books on philosophy, one of which is The Philosophical Equations of Economics. These books are available free for viewing online at www.philosophypublishing.com. Along with me are my panelists, Mark Brennan from the New York University School of Business, the Stern School of Business, and from the London Quarterly Review, established 1807. Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Chris.
Also with us is Rick Samuelson. Rick graduated from Yale, has an MBA from Wharton, an MA from Tufts. He is a former investment banker and is now a venture capitalist. Welcome, Rick.
Thank you.
The purpose of the philosophical angle is to examine and explicate the nature of the concepts and topics being used in current media. And we compare its essence with the usage and circumstances and how they are being used. This week, the subject of conversation is, do taxes matter? Let's get started. Often you see on late night or evening, nightly financial and news reports, some guests say that, well, taxes can be raised because in the 1990s, Clinton raised them and we prospered. And someone else will counter, well, in the Reagan era, we reduced taxes, and in the Bush era, we reduced taxes and the economy prospered. Well, you have this dichotomy. At both times, economies prospered. So, do taxes matter? Can we raise taxes and still prosper? Or is it that lowering taxes facilitates economic growth? Well, let's take a review here a little bit of economic growth. And it all starts with the economic transaction. Anything you do in life, you make a sacrifice to get a reward. And that sacrifice is made up of your risk in doing it, your information and knowledge that you have of the subject matter, your time and your effort, if it's a service, and if it's a good, you have to add in material. So anytime you go to a store, or you take what your profit from working, which is your reward, and you go and you use it to buy something to help you live your life. Or you go to the company and you spend your knowledge there, your time and your effort, and this produces a income, which is your reward. And from that income, an economy is born. And the sum of all those sacrifices that you do with your income we'll call the gross domestic product. But then the economy has a large hand that comes around. It's called the government, and it has taxes. And it extracts from your income some money to go and do what it will do. Now, if you have anything left over, that's savings. But what do we do with savings in almost every case is we invest it. Whether you take it to a bank and get interest on it or you invest in a new business. Rick is a venture capitalist. He will take savings and invest that in new businesses, and certainly helpful for an economy. But the government, what does it do? It's basically an inefficient operation. Probably about 85% inefficient. any dollar that goes into your that's paid to the government, they go off and do things like transfer payments, and probably only about $1 or $2 of that, of every 100, actually reach the end user of the transfer payments. But it has some efficient operations. I would venture to say that the defense is our defense is well done. Our judicial system is well done. Probably you could say that, though, it could be better done in a arbitration, private arbitration. But in some cases, the judicial system is absolutely necessary. Post office, well, I know there are other more efficient methods than the post office, Federal Express and et cetera, but they do a pretty good job. So roads, obviously, with the government's power of eminent domain, they remain one of the best places to expand the infrastructure of the United States. So there might even be some other things, but we'll put these operations and classify them as one of the government's efficient operations. The inefficients, well, they're probably too numerous to mention. But the biggest one is, of course, entitlements, entitlement transfers. But let's get back to growth, because this is what today's conversation is about. So growth is fostered from investment. An investment is used to find extra time or more efficient risk or a more efficient effort through the knowledge of somebody who is seeking the investment to produce a product. And from this efficiencies in knowledge, effort, risk, and time, we get growth. And from growth, we get added future sacrifices. This is the return on investment. So what makes it different between this situation in the 1990s or in the 2000s, during the Clinton and then during the Bush era, and maybe the Reagan, you can add, that was different from what people now believe, that if we raise taxes, we will not have a prosperous economy. What's different between now and in the 1990s and the 1980s? Well, I would like to venture that the difference is knowledge. In the 1990s, we had an explosion of growth from people's effort in inventing the internet and using the internet to make all sorts of efficiencies in the economy. When that happened, the risk went down, opportunity went up, and by the way, risk and opportunity are really the flip side of the same coin. Lower your risk, greater your opportunity. Information and knowledge went up. In the invention of the internet, knowledge was passed along in greater degree and faster, and made offices and people throughout the world more efficient. This explosion of knowledge and information exceeded the government's inefficiency and growth of the inefficiency, and therefore the 1990s prospered. But now, what is the situation now? If we raise taxes, as we just did in the recent law that was just passed to avert the fiscal cliff, nevertheless, some taxes were raised, and the administration, the Obama administration, is threatening more. The payroll tax was eliminated. The Obamacare taxes are coming into play. So taxes are being up, and they're going up for everybody. So will that produce a situation for growth amidst these government taxes? Let's go to our panel and seek advice. Mark, may I start with you? What is your thought on the increase of taxes that have just occurred, the prospect of increasing further taxes, and the prospects for growth of the economy?
Well, in this case, the increase in taxes will be nothing but a drain on the economy because they will not be invested in any productive assets or infrastructure, and instead will just be transferred to preferential lobbies, ethnic groups, foreign countries that have good lobbies here, and assorted other idiotic constituencies.
Rick, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think it's ironic that Mr. Obama is targeting quote-unquote rich, who are obviously in the best position and have the best paid lawyers and accountants to avoid actually paying much higher taxes. So those tax increases that are targeted at the wealthier individuals in society will not, in fact, raise much money. The payroll tax hits everybody, and it's significant. Clearly, the game plan of the administration, in as much as it's saying that over the next couple of months they want to find ways to raise even more taxes through closing loopholes, is to raise the whole level of revenue generation as much as they can in order to protect the continued deficit spending that they want to maintain. So to me, it's a political game. They won't raise nearly as many taxes as they're expecting, partly because this tax increase itself will help ease the United States into a recession, which is already underway. So the projections the government's publishing simply won't come true. At any rate, it's adding fuel to the fire, and frankly, it's exactly what Japan tried to do when it was a number of years ago when they were faced with similar deficits. They tried to raise taxes, and that threw the economy into recession. So this is another contributing factor, and yet another cautionary tale.
So, if I understand you correctly, you think that the revenue from taxes being raised just currently and projected in the future will actually not produce more revenue for the government. And is it due to a pending recession, or it's due to what do you think that's due to?
Well, there are two factors involved. A, the wealthy will find a way around it, not completely, but in many cases. They're clever, they'll find a way around it. We've seen this throughout the history of tax collection in the United States at the federal level. Right? The government has never been able to collect more than about 22% of GDP. It just hasn't happened. And usually it's closer to 20. So it's not going to happen this time either. But the fact, whenever you raise taxes, right, it discourages more productive activity, right, amongst savers, and that won't be the only cause of the recession we're entering, but it is a contributing factor to that.
Mark, what do you think about this possibility of a recession coming from present taxes? Is that a possibility?
I can't make an argument as to why a weakening economy that gets slapped with new taxes will not go into a recession. So somebody would have to explain to me how we're not going to, because I think it's a given that we are going to.
Okay. So you think there's a direct correlation between taxes and wealth in the economy and an inducement to a recession. Is there a direct correlation?
There's probably something of a correlation. I don't know what the R squared on it is. I'm just saying right now, with the economy as weak as it is, with the financial excesses still in the system, to just slap on taxes and think that's going to solve it is the definition of idiocy.
Okay. Rick, I suppose you concur with that. So let me get back. Let me get back to the coming recession, guys. Is the present level of taxation, in other words, what just happened with the payroll tax and the Obamacare taxes, is that by itself enough to drive us into a recession, do you think? Or is it going to take more taxes that are being threatened by the administration? Either one.
Chris,
go ahead.
I don't know if that's enough to cause a recession or to put us back in a recession or to cause the recession to continue. But I'm of the mind now that if everybody's going to receive Social Security, then everybody should pay for it. And the less debt we throw on the pile, the better. And if it hurts the economy, then people have to understand, wow, maybe we shouldn't be giving Social Security payments to everybody. People who claim that they're alcoholic, or everybody over the age of 67 who's worth more than $10 million. Maybe it's time to start rationalizing the system. And if this gets us there, more power to it.
Rick?
I think, well, at an economic level, there have been many, many cases in recent years where governments have raised taxes and depressed economic performance. You can cite many instances of that. What I find extraordinary about the current situation is the degree to which the White House is framing this as an economic victory when it's purely a political victory. I don't think Mr. Obama has any desire whatsoever or any plan to reduce spending, and believes that if he can demonstrate to the quote-unquote middle class that he is at the margin raising taxes more on the wealthy relative to the middle class, even if he's raising taxes on the middle class as well, that somehow he's going to win the popularity contest. And that's what this is about.
Okay. So the current law that was just put in place is is a political move as opposed to a move of necessity to either reduce the budget or let the economy prosper. Well, it had some aspects of that, of course, because it extended many of the Bush tax cuts. Was this current law not good? It certainly. What do you think, Mark? Was the current extension, or was this current law at least extending some of the tax cuts beneficial for the U.S. economy?
I mean, if we agree that taxes are a drain on the economy, then lower taxes are better. Then the old system would have been better. But the taxes are not what is driving the U.S. economy at this point. There are other problems.
Such as? Actually, you just mentioned a little bit ago, I forgot whether it was you, Mark, or Rick, made a correlation between lower entitlements and lower spending, government spending, and an economic revival. Is there such a correlation?
I think that was Rick.
Well, I saw an article recently which included New York and California amongst those states where there are now more persons on unemployment than are working. I haven't verified those figures, but if that's even remotely true,
that was California, state of California.
California and New York. Illinois was one of them. There were several states in that category, and I didn't look at the definition of unemployed versus working in any detail, but that is even a possibility shows the remarkable state of affairs we find ourselves in, and certainly does not foreshadow a highly productive economy in the near term. Because to work through all that unemployment is going to take X number of years of investment and economic growth, whether it's exports or otherwise, to hire the additional the slack employees or those who aren't working. You made the point initially that when the government taxes, only a few cents on the dollar actually ends up benefiting the supposed beneficiaries of any transfer payment. That has been demonstrated I don't know how many times. So we're talking about cents on the dollar that go to get into the hands of those who are actually supposed to benefit from it. If that isn't a definition of inefficiency, I don't know what is.
I think I will agree. So actually, we've just made also a tie-up between incentive and economic prosperity with government inefficiency and entitlement payments. So there's an interesting non-correlation. So if I read you correctly, the greater the entitlement state grows, the less incentives of society are maintained, and less an economy or prosperity can go forward. Is that a reasonable conclusion, or is there a relationship here, Mark?
I don't think there's a hard and fast relationship, because there are certain people for whom entitlements don't provide enough, and so these people still have the incentive to go out and make something of themselves. I wouldn't be content receiving Social Security checks right now and doing nothing with my life. Some people would be. But for people who actually have some motivation and some get up and go about them, who haven't been completely gummed to death by the Obama administration and by the Republican tax policies of the preceding 8 years, these entitlements do not totally override the incentive we have to succeed.
Okay. What do you think about this relationship, Rick, between incentive, entitlements, and economic prosperity?
Well, the really devastating thing about particularly long-term entitlements, and that's what obviously the Obama administration are pushing, that's why they've extended unemployment benefits for yet another year, is that you are quite literally paying people not to work that might be more aggressive in looking for jobs. And these are obviously people that need a little bit of a push anyway in many cases. So if you wanted to drive people to become more entrepreneurial, then you could argue that you should throw as many off of unemployment as quickly as possible in a weak economy as a means of stimulating it.
Okay. And in what way would more labor entering the labor force be stimulative? Mark?
Well, if there aren't jobs for those people, then there's a problem. And with Republican policies as they are, it'll be hard to imagine that jobs are going to come bursting out of the seams. Remember, the single largest entitlement since the LBJ administration was George W. Bush's prescription drug benefit. Now, there's an incentive for people not to pay for their own drugs and do whatever it takes to get on the dole. So while we've been sitting here complaining about the communist Obama, we should not forget about the deep, deep red socialist Bush who preceded him.
Yeah, I'm okay. A point well taken. But I'm wondering about this incentive about if more labor were to come into the marketplace off the entitlements, such as extending unemployment benefits, what would happen to the economy? Rick, you said that would be beneficial. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, in no uncertain terms.
Okay, and what would be what would be the thought process underlining this theory?
A need to put food on the table. Look, I've got illegal Mexicans in my neighborhood cutting lawns and painting houses. How is that possible with this level of unemployment?
Right.
How is it possible?
They go out and they find something to do. That's good. That's right.
You're exactly right. You put your finger on it.
Well, I wonder, they're finding employment for themselves because they're willing to do that work at a wage that Americans are not willing to accept. I wonder if we stopped that immigration, which we never will, because it's not really immigration, it's an invasion because it's illegal. If we stopped that flow of humanity and wages stayed at a higher rate, would Americans flock to those jobs?
Yeah, a separate problem. Probably we'll have to enter into that one later on in a later program. But it's interesting that this relationship of stopping unemployment benefits, what that would do to the economy. Well, I agree with Rick in that if you were to dump this capital onto the labor market, it would drive those with greater incentive to find a job. It would also bring the labor market wage probably down, which really would be, which would then find an equilibrium and adhere to what the economists call Say's law. And
unless it bumped up against the minimum wage laws,
exactly.
In which case those people would be outlawed from working below a certain wage. So I don't see that we can. I don't think we can unequivocally say that dumping all these people back on a labor market. You know, we had 12 million unemployed people in 1941, and we took them and we put them in the military, and that got rid of that problem. We don't have that solution now, although I have no doubt in my mind that the neocons are working on that, whether it's invading Iran or invading Syria or whatever, to dragoon most of the unemployed Americans and send them over to another unnecessary, unjust war. But as it stands now, you know, you're treading a thin line because there are not that many productive, high-paying jobs where we can just push these people into the labor force without bumping up against the minimum wage laws.
That's right. I agree with you. The labor force would bump up against the minimum wage law, which is a distortion produced by government, and thus, and also, we could say it's not only a distortion, but an inefficiency caused by the government into the labor market. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming and joining us. We're just about out of time, and we'll see you next week on The Philosophical Angle. Thank you very much.
Thank you.